Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Red Leaf latest podcast. I have the absolute pleasure to be in the WiseTech headquarters. We're here to meet the new CEO, Zubin, and to speak to the founder and chair of WiseTech, Mr. Richard White. How are we, gentlemen?
Great to be here.
Great.
So let's start off. The WiseTech results that came out fairly recently. I thought they were pretty good results. How do you read into them?
Look, I think FY25 was really a foundational year in many ways. We had the E2Open preparation of that acquisition, which we completed just after the close. Obviously, I came in as CEO. We had some board renewal, and we did a lot of work to prepare for a number of innovations around container transport optimization, our new commercial model. So very exciting things ahead.
I really hit the ground running in February and ran very hard for the remainder of that financial year and up until the results. And you can see, if the investors want to go to slide 33 of the investor deck that we produced for FY25, you'll see they've got an extraordinary large amount of stuff done and with a lot of stuff facing the future that has great opportunity. And there's a lot of expansion of our addressable marketplace in that. So we've got a number of things that were very early stage that have a lot of future potential, a lot of stuff that are mid-stage that have immediate potential for FY26, and we've got a lot of things completed and out of the way that were necessary to get FY26 in the right position. So I think we did Zubin has come in, we work incredibly well together. We actually worked together before for 15 years yeah. from 2004 until 2018. And we have different very joined skill sets, but different ways of looking at things, and that gives us a lot of capability, real diversity in thought, but also an alignment of action.
And also, if you think about the results, from a revenue point of view, we had guided towards the bottom of the range, and we basically came within 2% off that. From an EBITDA margin rate, though, we actually exceeded the guidance, and that's quite an extraordinary result and shows how efficient we are as a business and how well we run this business.
I thought they were very impressive results, and long may it continue. Now, the other big news with WiseTech, it's acquisition, I believe, number 58, quote me if I'm wrong, and the biggest
one.
Something like
57, 58, but
who's counting? Now, tell me all about this acquisition and what does it mean for WiseTech shareholders?
Well, we can both give some context to this. First of all, we have become very skilled at and experienced at and successful at M&A as one of the levers of growth in the business. So when we look at M&A, we spend a lot of time thinking about how that fits the strategy, how we use the capabilities of that company to drive value for shareholders, and how we drive value for customers. Now, E2Open, we probably looked at that business for almost a year and a half. Early on, we had decided that it wasn't right for us to do, wasn't the right time for us, wasn't the right at the right time for E2Open. But as things wore on and we looked at it again and again, we started seeing things that we could really build. The price came down because of the market forces and their performance. And we thought that it made incredible sense, particularly when you look at it through a product lens. And we are a product-led company.
Yeah, look, I would support all of that. In the 6 weeks since we've owned the company, since we've closed, we have been quite blown away at the incredible people with deep domain expertise, but also the great assets that they have. And those assets, when you couple them with CargoWise, our assets, makes us the provider across every single part of that supply chain and demand chain. Historically, we focused on logistics, which is the execution of logistics in the middle. Now we have buyers and suppliers and manufacturers and brand owners on the two ends, which is why we expanded our vision to be the operating system for global trade and logistics. So it's a transformative thing for us, and we've been very impressed over the last 6 weeks.
I think it's worth understanding that a little bit in a bit more depth because, first of all, you look at the fact that we're very strong in this global logistics space, global integrated logistics, which is all the parts of logistics together. What people call international freight forwarders are really integrated global logistics providers. And they're asset light typically. Over the last few years, probably the last 10 years, we've been developing very deep connectivity with the asset heavy providers, the shipping lines, the airlines, the road and rail capabilities. In 20 22, 23, we acquired quite a lot of rail in the US and a lot more in the sort of road in the US as well. And US is the market to sort of start from. It's got a lot of capability, a lot of volume. And that's the same thing that we're talking about here. But what we're really saying now is if you look at our customer base, the integrated global logistics providers, freight forwarders, we now have deep connections to their customers and deep relationship with their suppliers. And so on the supply side, you've got the ocean liners, the airlines, the rail and the road, and that's part of our portfolio of capabilities. We've got our customers, traditionally the freight forwarders, and then we've got their customers, the brand owners, the importers, the exporters, the people that need to plan demand, plan supply chain execution, plan global trade management, and have all that work as a consistent whole. So customer and supplier to our customers and their customers. Now, and also those customers in trade, the brand owners, the importers and the exporters, need the shipping lines directly. About half the world's trade goes directly to the shipping lines. The other half goes through the freight forwarding community. And so there's a fundamental coming together of the entire marketplace and an expansion into the trade piece, which isn't really separate to logistics. The fact that logistics is a separate thing is more about simplifying things so that they're dealt with in chunks. But you really should look at it as an entire system. We now have pretty deep interaction with the entire system, asset heavy, asset light, all of the commodities, products and so forth of the importers, exporters and brand owners. And that's an entire chain.
And we've spent 30 years building deep efficiencies and automations and productivity benefits into that logistics execution part. The fact that we can now build those same integrations and that depth of connectivity across the entire supply chain, that's powerful. We're the only company in the world that now has that ability to do that at every single vertical. End to end, from manufacturing to supply.
The other very impressive thing is your growth by acquisition strategy. How do you successfully keep on acquiring these companies and integrating them in seamlessly?
As you said, this is 50-something, 56th or 58th acquisition. So we have a tried and tested recipe for how we do this. We know how to integrate culture. We know how to integrate the back office functions. And then what we do really well is take their customers on a journey and take their products on a journey and decide how we bring their product mix into our product mix. That includes changing their business model sometimes, moving away from professional services, changing how they might sell to their customers, changing what we call product centricity. We are a very product-centric company where we build for the industry rather than building for a specific customer. Sometimes companies that we acquire are not like that, so it takes time for us to bring them on that journey.
Now, you're the new CEO. Richard, how did you and the board select this gentleman to be the new CEO? And you've got big shoes to fill. How do you fill those big shoes?
First of all, we took a look externally and looked at different choices that we would have to bring in a CEO from a tech company. It'd have to be a tech company of some sort. We also looked internally, and we've got a lot of very strong candidature in the company. And interestingly, Zubin is very familiar to us and has remained a good friend despite his departure to discover his career in different ways. But Zubin and I talked briefly, and really it wasn't about being the CEO. It was just an occasional discussion. But I went, that's almost a perfect fit, because from 2004 until Zubin's departure in 2018, we worked very closely together. And I think there was never a time when I didn't have a deep admiration for and a deep working relationship with Zubin. And whilst there are many very talented people, the job of CEO has to interact with myself and the board very specifically, and it has to be product-centric, and it has to be someone who's got deep development skills. And so I looked at many people, and I thought there are many good people externally and many good people internally, some incredibly valuable people, but in all, I think Zubin was the perfect fit. And I think the board, once we got through that process and proposed the choice, everybody saw it. And I think that's really important for the company, because the drive and the culture of the company needs to be done from a position of understanding how successful we've actually been and what that success is comprised of. There are all sorts of things that happen in a company's culture, but the ultimate driver of these successes is very clear to us, the long-standing people in the company.
Look, I bring that deep history of WiseTech, the 15 years that Richard talked about, and that was predominantly in product and technology, but also deeply in what we now call the WiseTech way, the establishment of the WiseTech way, the way that we sell, the way that we interact with each other, the way that we innovate, the way that we disrupt the industry. And then I spent 6 or 7 years outside doing multiple interesting things in EdTech and health tech and aged care technology, and really refined my skills in leadership, in strategy, in cultural, creation of culture. And I come back with what I think is quite a unique set of skills now to lead this company forward. The team is phenomenal. The leadership team is spectacular. The products are great. Richard and I have a very strong relationship that we've refined over that 15 years. We often come at things from different ways, but that actually helps lead to better results. And that's the same for many people within the company. So it's a very exciting time.
And in fact, I just want to talk about diversity for a minute. I truly believe that the only true diversity is diversity of thought. If I just had a bunch of people around me that were yes people, it wouldn't be very valuable and it wouldn't be very helpful. But the fact is that we have this engineering mindset, this creative abrasion, as we call it, which is about getting to the deeper understandings and how you create value by creating better ideas, by having those ideas rub up against each other. It means we don't agree on everything, and it doesn't have to be an agreement. It has to be a journey to the best possible outcome. Now, Zubin and I worked on that for decade and a half and very comfortable with the idea of having a debate about what is right and why it's right and what the underlying root cause of things is and why you get to that point and how you take that forward to something better. So this is a really good relationship, and it's the way we also relate to many of the people in the senior leadership team. I mean, that team, just by the way, has an average tenure of about 13 years. That's senior leadership. If you go one level down to the senior product managers and senior technical leads, that has an average tenure of about 20 years. And when you're in a deeply complex industry with lots of things that need to be solved for that are not being dealt with by the industry because they're complex and hard to understand, you need people with deep experience, with deep ability to argue the point and to actually propose a difference. And that idea of creative abrasion, of coming to the best possible solution through a diversity of viewpoints and thoughts, that's really, really valuable.
So, gentlemen, what motivates you both? Particularly with you, Richard, you've been in the game for a long time. What motivates you to make WiseTech even bigger, and what motivates you to be the CEO?
Well, first of all, I think, not speaking for Zubin specifically, but generally for the company, a lot of people here love the idea of building things, creating things, and solving complex problems that are endemically in the industry. The industry has this, let's call it the tyranny of the status quo. They understand the world through what they've done for the last 20 or 30 years, and it must be right because I've done it for 30 years. And I'm not criticising the industry. It is very common across many industries and many walks of life where people get comfortable with the way things are and like to just keep that moving along because it's easy. You get up in the morning, you know what your job is. For me, and I think many people, the challenge is to look at things and go, well, that's just not right. That surely could be better than that. What we're doing with container transport optimization is a good example of that. But there are many examples of where we've come at the industry with something which is deeply better and quite shocking. Sometimes it really creates a reaction. But when you see it actually working, it suddenly makes things much better and people run to it once they've realised that it's much better. But that is an expensive thing to do. It requires a lot of energy, a lot of dissonance, in fact. And the idea that WiseTech is just making products like everybody else is just not true. We really do try to do things different and better.
This idea of challenging the status quo is what gets me out of bed. Doing things differently, understanding how there are multiple ways of solving a problem, but knowing which way is going to get us the best results. The other two aspects that really excite me and helped me make the decision to come back to WiseTech is this idea of leading now what is nearly 7,500 people, or a bit more than 7,000 people, and aligning them and giving them purpose, explaining to them how the work they do leads to results or leads to what we call big rocks, the outcomes that really matter, and giving them real purpose in coming to work every day, allowing them to be their best professional selves, which is great for them, but it's also great for us. And then the last one I'll touch on is the work that WiseTech does in education. Not just in industry education, but the work that we do with our Earn and Learn program to inspire high school and university new technologists to enter the workforce and to be the next generation of Australian technologists. That's powerful. It's socially a great thing to be doing. It's also great for us because they contribute their immense value into WiseTech and for our customers.
If you think about what we're doing in high schools, we have about 250,000 students on a platform that we are largely the sponsor for that drive high school education in the computer science area. That's not a small thing. That's a very big thing. And then we run contests to bring the best of those students forward, and then we select from the best and the brightest to create an intake into WiseTech. And those students join WiseTech and work full-time, have a full-time adult wage. So they're not flipping burgers while they're at university. They're literally working for WiseTech full-time and going to university part-time, sitting next to very seasoned professionals doing highly professional work and doing it in a way that matters, because if they don't do it right, it's straight into our product and straight away obvious that it's a problem. So they really have to stand up and perform. And if they perform well academically and from the company's perspective, they also get their HECS paid for entirely. So they get no university debt, an adult wage, no university debt, and a share portfolio which vests when they graduate of WiseTech shares, which means that they own a part of the future. Done well, they'd probably have enough deposit for a house at year 4. Now that's a hell of a difference, but from going to university, developing a HECS debt, and maybe getting a profession that might be employable, but maybe not. I mean, this is a guaranteed long-term success.
That's fantastic. Like, you've set up people's future with that program.
Yeah. The pairing of theory and practical, everyone knows that delivers results. So it's a really phenomenal program.
In fact, many of the students in that cohort perform right at the upper edge of the academic achievements. They're getting Ds and HDs, distinctions and high distinctions. And I think, again, it shows a different form of thinking from the company. In fact, there's a couple of mantras. I mentioned the other one about creative abrasion, which is a mantra. Here's another one. Different isn't necessarily better, but better is always different. And if you're prepared to think differently and make that something that is really valuable in your product, in your marketplace, in the way you educate, in the way that you save the environment by making the supply chain far more efficient, that's also positive from an ESG point of view. Each of these things feeds into and makes the company better. It makes the life of our staff, and 90% of the WiseTech staff are shareholders, and it makes our customers' lives better as well. Those things, combining a win-win-win, is something that's hard to do, but it's the best thing to do.
Gentlemen, I really appreciate your time. Congratulations on being a CEO, and long may the WiseTech success continue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.